251, Range 5 Coast District Plan 10-3-13, which is the Drake Crescent development. The intent of the bylaw is to allow RM3 multiple family residential development. Every person who believes that their interest is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard, respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. None of you will be discouraged or preventing from making your views known. However, it's important to restrict your remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. A person may make their statement in writing, as outlined in the public notice, and if received by the deadline, their presentation will be read by staff at the public hearing. If a person wishes to make a presentation at the public hearing, they are welcome to do so, provided that the following criteria are followed. This is necessary in order to allow for the recording of the public hearing process. 1. The chairperson will recognize only those individuals who present themselves at the table and speak into the microphone. 2. Prior to speaking, please provide your full name and be prepared to spell your surname for the corporate administrator. Please also provide your residential or business address. 3. Should you wish to read from a prepared statement, the city would appreciate receiving a copy for reference purposes by the corporate administrator. Members of the council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. Please note, this is not a question period at which a debate takes place. City Council will not provide any comments on issues raised, but will be in attendance to listen to the comments presented. Should no additional speakers present themselves, the chair will call 3 times for anyone else to speak to the matter, and if no one else comes forward, the public hearing will be adjourned. 6. After the public hearing has adjourned, the council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. So I'm calling this meeting to order, and the first order of business is going to be the zoning amendment bylaw number 3382-2015, application for lot 3, district lot 251, range 5, coast district plan 10-313, Drake Crescent. And I think the city planner is first up.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you noted, this application is for rezoning of the property located on Drake Crescent. The proposed bylaw, which is included in Attachment 1, received a second reading at the January 25th regular council meeting, and the public reading was scheduled for today. The report presented to the council on January 25th, which is included in its entirety in attachment number 2, remains current and in brief. The property is located on Prince Rupert Boulevard and Drake Crescent, as illustrated on the overhead. The official community plan designates the area, which is hatched, as residential. The zoning bylaw zones the property RM1, which is low-density multifamily residential development, and the proposal is to rezone it from RM1 to RM3. The applicant has also committed to a maximum of 80 units. The applicant held a public information meeting on December 9th, which was successful. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure has reviewed the implications of the proposed density on the Highway 16, and based on the applicant's commitment not to exceed 80 units, determined that the traffic impact study is not required. MOTEI staff also signed off on the proposed bylaw as illustrated in attachment number 1. The applicant met with the city engineering staff and provided satisfactory site access plan. This was the only necessary action from the internal referrals. At the January 25th meeting, there were two questions. Firstly, Council asked the impact of additional vehicles on the peak school hour traffic. Staff conducted a traffic count and engaged a Stantec traffic engineer who determined that the increase will be noticeable. However, overall, it will have a low impact on the design capacity of Prince Rupert Boulevard. Council also asked about applicant contribution to city amenities. Staff discussed that with the applicant. His written response is included in a report. The applicant is in the audience, and he'll address this during the public hearing. Quick analysis. The proposal, of course, is to rezone from RM1 to RM3. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the existing higher density RM2 and RM3, which are abutting the property or nearby the property. Intensification and retention of the community footprint is one of the underpinnings of quality of life official community plan. Notifications were distributed to the neighboring properties, advertised in the local newspapers. As at the date of this report, and in fact as of this afternoon, staff did not receive any comments or submissions. In conclusion, the applicant responded to the requirements, and the council has options to reject the application, ask for additional information, or proceed as per the staff recommendation. Additional comments are provided by City Manager. Would you like to address that, Bob?
What my comments are, if council is interested in the amenities that were sort of offered, then we need to do them on a contractual basis before we finalize the zoning bylaw, or probably give the bylaw any further readings until that's complete.
Mr. Long, could you go over that one more time? You want, please?
Yeah, it's just to state that what we need to do is have an assurance that if there is amenities being offered by the developer, which it sounds like it from the written response, that that offer be established in a contractual arrangement with the City of Prince Rupert before we complete the rezoning process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Krekic. Does anybody on council have any questions to ask Mr. Krekic? If not, then we'll move on.
One quick question. If we go to RM3 without the 80 unit restriction, how many units is he legally allowed to put in there with the RM3?
In RM3, it's not based on number of units, it's on a floor area ratio. The property is approximately 7,500 square meters. The ratio for RM3 is 1.25, so in total 10,000 square meters of floor space, which then has to be divided amongst common areas, as well as hallways, and units depending on the size. You're apartment owners, you know how that works. Units depending on number of size can range, in numbers.
But it would be considerably more than 80.
If the apartments are at the 1,000 square feet or 100 square meters, then it wouldn't be more than 80, because you have to dedicate the common areas and open space. If the units were less than that, then it conceivably could be.
Sorry, Mr. Long, is this one of the things that you would suggest that we, if we wanted to, we would put that in contractual form?
Yes, if council wants a limit as to the number of units there, then we need to establish that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to come up? A developer would to make a presentation, or?
I will. I'm not sure if your preference would be to speak first or after other comments.
Well, I'm kind of loose. You can speak first, and then if it's not a debate, but if there was a question that needed to be answered, then we would ask you to come up and answer that after. Thank you.
I'm Kevin Stunder. I reside in North Vancouver. I think my name's in the package, so I won't go through the spelling in that. My background is development work, mainly in resorts. I worked most of my career with Interwest, building ski resorts. Since then, since I'm from Prince George originally, I've been doing some residential development in Smithers, BC, where I've built a 29-home lakefront subdivision. With that, also some homes within that. So kind of developer, but I like to roll up the sleeves and build too. With this parcel here, I found it quite desirable as an infill parcel within Prince Rupert, just because there is very few scarce parcels of land available over half an acre where you could look to put in multifamily homes, that either being in apartments, condos, or townhomes. With working with the staff here, this parcel was identified, being close to current amenities such as the high school, being 300 meters away, Leicester and the recreation center about to 900 meters away. I won't call McDonald's an amenity, but it's close to that as well. And I do have other development lands adjacent to the parcel, but not behind it. But the owner of the bowling alley site, which I'm looking to develop at this time as well. So, with this parcel here, with great access to water, sewer, storm, power, three-phase power right across the street. Again, it's a bit of a rarity in terms of Rupert. It's a parcel that is ready to build on, and I think it's a desirable parcel in that respect. The discussion around amenities, I did create a statement inside the package that, with development, my background is building very amenity-rich developments. For example, in Smithers, I took a lakefront subdivision where we could have had, it's 29 homes. It could have been 5 direct lakefront parcels of land, which were the most expensive. I only built 3 in order to put a park in. The park has a dock, it has a shared fire pit, and also a shared amenity building, so the residents that don't live right lakefront can also have all that access. So, that's one thing I focus on. This one here, it's being close to the rec center and other things like that. It of course makes it desirable. With Zeno and staff, we did talk about the idea of an amenity contribution for this parcel. Although the one thing that it was a conversation that occurred after the second read of zoning. And there is not currently a bylaw in place for it, but in terms of coming up with great ideas to make this parcel more livable, one thing was identified being a trail, or I guess is more of a fix-up of a previous trail that went from Prince Rupert Boulevard, and actually, I hope I don't wreck his slide thing. Sorry, I just want to get back to the overhead. The aerial? Just scroll. I'll scroll back. Okay, there we go. Sorry. There's one more. There's a set of trails that Zeno has put me in touch with Steve Mullum of the Backcountry Association that go literally from Cow Bay, Cappuccinos through the Hayes Creek system up to 11th, and then so 11th would probably just be a little bit off map here, but it once did connect just to this area here. Sorry if you can see the mouse gets to the north side of the property. There is an overgrown trail in that direction that was developed at one point. I hiked it today, only got 1 foot muddy. That does connect to 11th, and from then on, once you're at 11th towards 6th, it's a very developed, trail that you can walk, 3-4 people abreast or ride bikes on. This part here is a bit gnarly. I did not know until after the second reading that there was a trail there, and it does look like something that would be a great amenity, not only for the proposed buildings that I'm doing, but for this area. This. Like I walked it today, and it basically, to get to 11th, it took me about 10 minutes, and that was a little bit of bushwhacking. There's also an entrance between some of the townhomes that's partially also, it looks like it's more used, though it is, again, into somebody else's private land, so I didn't consider that, but there also is a route that somebody showed me through there. Zeno did ask if I am willing to provide an amenity contribution. But the thing is coming a month into this, I have built trails before. I have worked with Rotary Club in Smithers, built bridges over streams and things like that. This is something that I'm definitely interested in looking at, because it does But right now, what I don't know is if I offer to build a trail there, if I could get the permissions, the right-of-ways in progress, if those things exist. I do not know about that. So. At this point, but I think it would, I did walk from the property there today, had lunch at Dolly's and walked back, and I crossed one street. So I think that's excellent. I think, and again, I didn't know it exists, so it's a huge plus about the property. I am willing to look at that. I'd look with local groups, probably a local service group, and look to build things like that. But what I at this point, I don't think there's enough information to tie anything specific to encumber the parcel and the process. And again, what I'm willing to do is look at that at the development stage of the project. I can't build a single thing without a development permit. And what I'd hope to work with council on is to find out, or council and staff to find out, what are the right-of-ways, who owns those pieces of land, and how could those things be developed. But in my opinion, it'd probably be something relatively simple that would best be done with some coordination with the local service group. Projects always go better that way. And find other groups that are interested in helping out along the way, and I'd be happy to lead that process. But as I stated, I don't want to hold up development while we find out something that could possibly take several months in terms of establishing right-of-ways and permits and things like that. So with respect to Bob Long's comment, I would hope that the council could see that the value of getting some housing into Prince Rupert on a parcel that perfectly fits the quality of life OCP, as well as other things that seems to be highly consistent to the statements made in Rebuild Prince Rupert, that we could look at that and any amenity contribution, which is again, difficult to look at without months of study, be deferred to a development permit stage. Any questions from council, or is that? Yes?
Kevin, when would you be breaking ground on this?
Obviously, with a whole bunch of mega proposed projects in town, this site, the one thing I do like about it, it has the flexibility. In the current zoning, it's zoned to permit 32 townhomes. If one of these things, obviously there's some decision cycles that are going to take, still a few months take place. I'd probably wait for that before deciding anything. Most likely, right now, some townhomes mixed with a single condominium block would probably make the most sense. But if we do get, in the timing of the next few months, one of the projects proceeding, then I'd be looking at, getting closer up, between the, two two condo buildings. Just with your earlier question, you talked about the number of units and the cap on that. 80 units would be extremely tight just with parking on this site. It's 1.94 acres. So, I do square feet. I haven't converted buildings to metric yet, but that's 106,000 square feet. So Zeno is quite accurate. You couldn't contemplate too much more than 80. Ministry of Transportation's, had no problem, if there was, 100 units on the site, but I picked 80 as a max, though I have been looking at building plans for a 30-unit block with some accessory townhomes next to it. So that's probably it seems the most common thing. That's most of the developers in Terrace are starting with townhome projects before they really bite the bullet on a full-scale condo built block. So yeah, but I'd hope this summer. Anything else?
So you're saying that you're going to start this summer? Is that what start this summer, and the size of what you start on is going to be determined by whether there's an LNG announcement or not? Is that basically what you're saying?
Okay, still on this time. Yeah. Yes, if it turns out to be the first building to be a condo building, then it's not as easy as townhomes. Townhomes don't require an architect if the base is 6,000 square feet to start. So that type of project could start sooner. But if it is to be a condo block as the first building, and if the demand is for that, which it almost is already without LNG, to be honest, but then we'd be looking at hiring an architect, creating a site plan, and taking that to development permit stage. So that would take longer to break ground, is what I'm saying.
No other questions from council? Councillor Wandawa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this project go through, are you planning to bring labor from out or local people?
I'm starting to get to know some of the local contractors and builders. It's come to my attention that there hasn't been a multifamily build in Prince Rupert since, I think, 98 on fourplex. So there is not a lot of contractors that have done multi-unit construction, not a lot that have done condominium type projects. So what I'd hope to do is put the bid out. I've been in contact with a couple local contractors that I think would be capable, but it would be tendered, and the cost of bringing other people into town is quite expensive because there's nowhere to stay. So that's one thing that I think would probably give the locals a good competitive advantage. And since I have worked with building crews in Smithers, Prince George, and those areas there, it might be good if there is a lack of expertise for something like this, that we could work with a lead contractor that has experience in this. Such as myself, which I am, but then also with a local crew around it. So,
If there's no more discussion, thank you very much.
thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public who wishes to comment on this project? The zoning amendment bylaw?
Good evening, I'm Keith Lambourne. I'm the managing broker and owner of Royal LePage, Prince Rupert, and currently serving as the vice president of the Prince Rupert and District Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to speak in support of the proposal for this much needed subdivision. I'd like to speak firstly to the demand for such a proposal. We need to get our head away from LNG for a moment. It's irrelevant to this project. We have a demand right now. We have no supply. And this isn't just a thing for people like me who are going to retire in about 10 years, hopefully, and want to downsize, but young people, because increasingly with the increase in the market, they're getting priced out of the first-time buyers market. It's vital that we keep those folks involved and engaged in the real estate community in Prince Rupert, and this is a potential entry point of affordability for first-time buyers as well as us elderly folk that don't want to go up and down stairs shortly. So that's number one. Number two, the location's absolutely fantastic for it. There really isn't much of a difference between this and Oasis Apartments, which is right opposite on the street, so I don't foresee any issues with that. And thirdly, it really does need to be done as soon as possible, and to hold this up because a nice developer thought it would be a good idea to put a trail through. Let him put a trail through after, but the most important thing is to let him build this now because we have the demand for it. As I speak, I'm not aware of a single rental vacancy in a townhouse or an apartment in Prince Rupert. I know Macro Properties are completely full. And my property management arm in my company has no vacancies at all for any of the properties that we manage. It's needed, and it would be nice if we could get it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks.
For the first time, are there any further members of the public who would like to address this bylaw? For the second time, are there any further members of the public who would like to come and address this bylaw? For the third and final time, are there any members of the public who would like to come forward and address the bylaw in this public hearing? Then hearing none, I will declare this public meeting adjourned. Thank you. Now we can move on to the regular meeting. And the regular meeting of council held today, which is February 22nd. And the first, I'm calling this meeting this order, and the first piece of business is that we suspend the regular meeting and that the committee of the whole meeting be convened. It's moved by Councillor Randawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Sorry, I'll try to remember to raise your hands. Carried. Committee of the whole meeting. Sheet is probably longer. The rules and regulations for the meeting is probably longer than the meeting. For those who of you are present, and for those who you are watching via television, let me explain that a committee of the whole meeting is a committee that consists of all members of council. This meeting allows council members to deal with issues in greater detail, but is less formal than a regular council meeting. During this meeting, issues are not formally adopted, but recommendations may be made at this meeting to the next regular council meeting. At that time, the recommendations of the previous committee of the whole meeting will be adopted and acted upon. Some key points to remember when making a presentation are, remember that council meetings are televised, so it's very important to introduce yourself and, if applicable, name of the organization that you're representing, and speak directly into the microphone in a clear voice. When presenting, please address any comments or questions to the chair of the meeting. Keep your presentation brief. 5 minutes would be ideal. Once you have completed your presentation, please ensure you summarize any requests or concerns. The chair will ask council members if they have any questions. Remember, there will be no decisions made at this meeting on any requests or concerns that you have made. Lastly, requests will be referred to staff for review, report, and recommendation to council. And council meetings are very full. We would appreciate your consideration of your time allotment. So now we know what happens every last meeting of the month. And so I'm opening the floor. Is there anybody who would like to come and speak to the to council at the committee of the whole? Are there any issues? If not, we have a presentation from Mr. Holzbauer, how to increase funding revenue to local governments under the Climate Action Review Initiative program. Thank you.
Good evening. I have a handout here.
Sorry for mashing up your name. I was wondering, how do you pronounce it?
So, okay, Holzbauer. I was born in Germany. Just press the button.
Yes, you're on now, and then you just press it. If your light goes off because council member asks a question, then you just press it again to go back on.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, your worship and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Martin Holzbauer, and I reside in Thornhill, BC. Excuse me. This presentation is to potentially increase funding to local governments under the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program. The City of Prince Rupert is part of the Northwest Resorts Benefits Alliance and has approached the province for revenue sharing, but currently has been turned down. Perhaps to increase funding from the province to the City of Prince Rupert using an existing program can be more successful. Under the Carbon Action Revenue Incentive Program, local governments receive funding for their own emission reductions. The program mentions community-wide reductions as well. Currently, if anybody within a community reduces their own emissions, neither that entity nor the local government receives a reduction credit. The province gets the benefit from the emissions reductions for free. Right now, until noon, March 25, 2016, the province is looking for input for reducing our impact on the environment and how to proceed with the carbon tax. If all the local governments of BC ask the province to expand the program in the following way, to have the same benefits of a rebate for anybody that reduces. People, businesses that reduce also have a given amount, a dollar amount given to them and the same amount to the local government where a reduction occurred. This way, BC may meet their 2020 emission reduction target. So with this program, there would be the following benefits: local investments, local jobs, emission reductions, more funding from the province to the local government, benefits from emission reductions on the local level, air quality and others. The province would have additional economic input, emission reductions, overall energy use reductions, and even increased property taxes from the local investments. On April 13, 2015, our Premier challenged other jurisdictions to meet or exceed BC's standard for climate action. The handout is for your reference and shows clearly that BC is not doing very well as compared to other provinces and some other countries in the world. Perhaps the province needs to be reminded of this and needs to put additional funding from the carbon tax into emission reductions instead of tax reductions. My proposal is to get the province to fund any reduction, once to local government and once to the entity that reduces, with the province having the benefit of a permanent reduction. Thank you.
Have you written? Did you write that down? Your presentation?
Yes.
Could you give a copy to our assistant corporate administrator who can
Yes.
copy it for council? That would be great. Thank you. So, are there any questions from council? So, what you're suggesting is that the climate action program be expanded beyond municipalities to businesses and individuals? Is that the
Yes. Yes. If you look at the handout, BC, it says BC is moving climate action forward. Your input is essential to this process. The province is looking for input, and it also says further a little bit down, all submissions sent by organizations will be posted to this site. And if you look on the first page, BC is on the very top, and it's on place number 6 out of 10, and number 7 out of 10. In my opinion, that's not really a leader.
no questions from anybody on council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to present? Any questions? Okay, then a motion to adjourn would be in order. It's moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Kinney. Seeing no discussion, call for the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Moving along. You see the agenda before us. Is there any late additions to the agenda? Seeing none, a motion would be in order to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Andawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Minutes. The minutes of the special council meeting of February 9th. A motion to adopt. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Any discussion? Any errors or omissions? Seeing no hands, question will be in order. Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Declare that carried. Minutes of the regular council meeting of February 9th. Motion is to adopt them. Motion is made by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. Is there any discussion, errors or omissions? Seeing none, question be in order. Questions on call. Those in favor? Opposed? Declare that carried. We have no petitions and delegations, no unfinished business, and reports and recommendations. Report from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2016 budget presentation. Mrs. Bombin, please go right ahead.
Good evening, Acting Mayor and Council. We are presenting the 2016 municipal budget for the City of Prince Rupert. For the benefit of the Council, the viewers in the gallery and at home, we have prepared a presentation to accompany the report to Council. The report itself is for information purposes, and it is requested that Council defer direction with respect to the 5-year financial plan and related tax rate bylaw until after public consultation. Our presentation is as follows. We would like to take about 5 minutes to review some of our unique services and our revenue challenges. After, we will present the budget requirements and the impact to property taxpayers. And finally, we will outline our plans for public consultation. As mentioned in 2015's budget, an independent report on the capacity of the ferry service identified our airport as one of the most challenging to access in the industrialized world. We are also likely one of the few municipalities in BC that have to subsidize their own transportation to our airport. Most are accessible by road and light rail and are entirely user pay. Although many of our neighbors and visitors benefit from the proximity of our airport, they only pay on a user basis. Our municipality pays not only a user fee, but also subsidizes the operation through taxation. 2016 predicts a subsidization of $1 million. In 2004, the province of British Columbia capped the major industrial mill rate for all municipalities with a qualifying port export-import property. Therefore, the city can only charge flat mill rates on industry that is considered eligible. All of the city's major industrial operating activity qualifies for these capped rates. These flat mill rates are levied on assessed values that depreciate, meaning they go down every year. A flat mill rate on a declining assessed value results in less taxation. In effect, there is diminishing revenue received from export-import industries yearly, and the only way to keep the industrial tax base flat is to have new investment every year. The province in part recognized that by cutting the municipal industrial mill rate virtually in half in 2004, when the legislation was implemented, would cause an enormous spike in the other tax classes' taxes. so they pay us the competitiveness grant as a means to offset part of the impact. This grant is only adjusted for inflation as determined by the Ministry of Finance. Since 2013, the grant has increased only $33,000. The grant is taken into consideration every year. The city only determines the taxes needed after the grant is budgeted. Here is an example of the tax cap legislation as it impacts you. Let's assume a constant 5-year budget shortfall annually of $10 million before taxes. Because the city has to balance its budget, it must bring in the $10 million every year, and so the last resort is property taxation. In our example, the residential, business, and light industrial tax classes contribute $7 million in year 1, represented by the green part of the graph. The major industrial class, represented by the blue part of the graph, contributes the other $3 million. In year 2, the city again needs to bring in taxes of $10 million. But the industrial assessment has declined, and so with the cap, the major industrial group can only be levied $2.75 million in tax. The only other source of tax income is from the remaining tax classes, being the residential, business, and light industrial. Therefore, their tax bill goes up from $7 million in year 1 to $7.25 million in year 2. The same deficiency continues to happen in year 3, 4, and 5 because of declining industrial assessments. In our example, in year 5, the other tax classes are now paying $8 million in tax, whereas in year 1, they were paying $7 million. And the industrial properties are now paying $2 million in tax, whereas in year 1, they were paying $3 million. So you can see the conundrum caused when council can't set rates for all the tax classes. It essentially transfers the burden onto the other classes. And that's to maintain the same $10 million level of tax requirement. It doesn't take into account inflationary costs, such as wages, services, supplies, and capital increases. This is a large contributing factor behind why taxes on the residential, business, and light industrial classes in Prince Rupert continues to increase without any noticeable change in services provided. This is to help our friends at the port. For clarity, all of their major industrial tenants pay the taxes the city bills. The problem is the province has placed a limit on the mill rate the city can use. Now on to our budget requirements. Included in the operations budget are capital works and purchases funded in part by operating revenues. The balance are funded through dividends from Legacy Inc., grants, reserves, and surplus. As will be discussed later, funding from reserves and surplus is not sustainable. We are partway through our Planning for Major Projects initiative. In 2015, we were able to commission necessary studies, including the land base and population surveys. We now have the ability to predict the increase to our population if a major project makes a final investment decision. We have also begun the Redesign Prince Rupert initiative, which is being conducted by the Community Development Institute from the University of British Columbia, and we encourage people to find out more at their office located at Community Futures of the Pacific Northwest. All of our work on planning for major projects has been made possible through the capacity funding by Legacy Inc. This year's budget includes the same level of funding, meaning there is no impact to the taxpayers for this planning process. Should major projects fade into nothingness, the community would be no worse off. If it comes, we will be in a position to receive it. We are pleased to announce that our budget is balanced for 2016. Therefore, there is no necessary increase to the mill rate for operations. That's usually the part in the provincial legislature where people clap. The prior slide does not include saving for the purposes of capital reserve replenishment. As mentioned in a previous slide, we cannot continue funding capital with reserves and surplus because they are not unlimited, and we cannot rely on grants. We need to save for future capital replacement or sustain greater tax increases to service debt requirements when other sources of funding are not available. It is Finance's obligation to recommend good financial management. A modest increase for future infrastructure needs is easier in years where our operating needs have been covered. Therefore, we are recommending a 2% increase to the mill rate for allocation to reserves solely to mitigate large one-time tax increases in the future from capital spending. Property owners are reminded that the city has an infrastructure deficit of over $250 million. This causes us to take a hard look at our plan for saving to renew our assets and minimize any debt requirements needed. Now, we understand there is some confusion as to what the mill rate is. It is a rate per 1,000 assessed value. For example, 1 mill is $1 per 1,000 assessed value. It is not a reference to the closed pulp mill. Before we get into how the recommendation affects the taxpayer, we will go over how the percent increase affects the mill rate. This is how it works. Let's use the following example for simplicity. Suppose we start with a mill rate of 10, and the proposed increase to the mill rate is 2%. This would result in 10 times 2% equals 0.20. We then take our beginning mill rate of 10 and add the calculated amount of 0.20, which equals 10.2. In our example, that would be our final proposed mill rate. A mill rate percent increase of 2% is not the beginning mill rate of 10 plus 2. Here is the impact of the proposed 2% increase to the existing beginning mill rate for the residential class for 2016. We start with the mill rate of 6.75310. 2% of this rate is 0.135062. We add our beginning mill rate to the calculated value and arrive at our final proposed 2016 residential class mill rate of 6.88816. This slide shows that our mill rates have decreased over the past 4 years, and again for 2016, even after the recommendation. To calculate the impact to a property owner of the recommended mill rate, one needs to compare the 2015 general property tax to the amount calculated for 2016. The 2015 general property tax can be found on the 2015 property tax notice as shown in the red circles. It's where it says general-residential, for instance. The formula to calculate the general levy is on this slide. Take 2016's assessed value, divide it by 1,000, times the 2016 mill rate. This is the municipal property tax for 2016. Compare this to the 2015 general property tax as found on the previous slide. This will inform you whether the taxes have gone up or down on your home. We have provided all of the proposed mill rates on the next slide for viewers to calculate the potential impact to them, whether it be their home or their business property. These are the proposed municipal rates for 2016 after implementing the recommended increase for infrastructure reserve replacement. I will pause here for a moment for our viewers.
Ms. Bauman, you have the major industrial and major industrial capped at 27.5 and 22.5, and a utility capped at 40. So could you just maybe just go over who has capped those again one more time?
The provincial government has capped the rate. We have provided the effect to a homeowner with an average assessed value in both 2015 and 2016. The proposed increase for infrastructure savings results in an additional $36 per year, or 10 cents per day. Here is an incremental assessed value list of expected municipal tax paid at the 2015 actual rate, the new 2016 rate, and the proposed 2016 rate after incorporating the recommendation. For example, if a homeowner's value in 2015 was $200,000, the 2015 municipal taxes paid were $1,476. At the new 2016 rate, the taxes are $126 less at $1,350. At the proposed 2016 rate, the taxes are $1,377, or $100 less than in 2015. If you compare only the 2016 rate and the proposed 2016 rate, the increase is $27 for placement into infrastructure reserves. So if a homeowner's value stayed the same between 2015 and 2016, because the mill rate is less than in 2015, the homeowner can expect to pay less tax in 2016. Many home values did increase during the year. However, others stayed the same or decreased. This is why it is important to calculate the expected value of taxes individually to determine the impact to each property owner. It is not a simple statement that everyone's taxes may be going up. The provincial government offers residents the homeowner grant and a tax deferral program. These programs are available to reduce taxes paid and defer the tax payment through a loan. Please contact City Hall for details of each program or look on your property tax notice. It is expected that changes are likely. BC Assessment will release their revised roll March 31st, which will take into account any appeals to assessed value. Any reductions to assessed values may impact the proposed mill rates. Staff is planning to have 2 public consultation opportunities. The first is to be held at the Leicester Centre for the Arts at 7 p.m. on March 14th. It will also be broadcast on Channel 10 and at www.princerupert.ca/live. During this consultation, we will have the same electronic polling from the audience at home and at the Leicester Centre. The second public consultation opportunity is to be held during the regular meeting of Council here in Chambers on March 21st, 2016. Thank you to Council and our community for listening. We look forward to the consultation process to be held next month.
Does anybody from Council have any questions for our Chief Financial Officer?
Corinne, you said that in major industry it would be around 57%, and then you showed the cap. So if the major industry wasn't on port property, would that mean that our major industry would be paying 57 instead of 27 or 22?
And just a correction, you might not have been able to see it from your angle, but the proposed mill rate is 52 for the major industry. Yeah, but basically, if an industry builds, they can apply if they fall under the criteria of the Port Property Tax Act, which has been implemented by the province and not the federal government. And then if they are accepted as an eligible property, then they qualify for the capped rate, and then they move into that class.
One thing you never pointed out there is, excuse me, is the birth corridor cap.
The birth corridor itself is another provincial legislation, and what it does is it exempts certain items for port activity, such as docks, wharfs, dolphins, any of those types of equipment that are necessary for export or import. There's no rate, it's just an exemption. It depends on what the actual level is, how much is involved. So it's a portion of their assessment. So if 25% of their assessment of their improvements are actually considered those types of items, then they would be exempted. For example, I believe what you're referring to is my presentation last year, where MAR Terminals gets 50% of their assessment, that was last year, exempted because it all qualifies under the birth corridor for exemption. This year, I believe it's just a little bit less, and it's under DP World right now.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Bombin, I have a quick question, and I think it might warrant a report, because I wouldn't expect you to have all this information offhand. But one thing that we've learned over the course of, how long have we been elected now? Just over a year. is a tax sharing agreement that exists on Ridley Island. And I mean, I don't think it's any secret that the city's got some revenue challenges as well as cost pressures, and that's one arrangement that I know you didn't make note of it tonight, but is causing, I think, some additional pressure that warrants at least a little bit of our consideration and discussion. So I was wondering if you might be able to just comment a bit on what the annual impact of that agreement is, not only for the city of Prince Rupert, but also for the district of Port Ed. And I was also wondering if we could get a report just kind of the historical nature of that agreement and the historical annual cost up to now.
I can provide a brief comment, and certainly I can prepare a report. You're referring to the Ridley Island tax sharing agreement, and that is an agreement where Port Ed and Prince Rupert agreed that we would share all of the tax, well, 17% of the taxes that we collect from Ridley Island we would pay to Port Ed. And it's because the Ridley Island is in our taxing jurisdiction. And I'll have to go and in my report I can talk a little bit about how that actually came up fuller. But as far as impact each year, just in last year we paid $700,000 to the District of Port Ed. And I'm not exactly sure just what percentage it is of Port Edward's taxes, their intake and revenues. I can also find that out considering their financial statements are available.
If I've got agreement on council, I think that's a really important topic for discussion. I'm not sure if it's too short notice for staff, but for the public consultation in particular, that's a very tangible amount of money that has a significant impact on the city of Prince Rupert, and I think it warrants some further discussion. I'm not sure though if such a tight timeline with the public consultation would maybe it's just enough to ask for the report to be drafted for the next council meeting, and then we can discuss it further from there. But I think that's something that I was definitely not aware of before taking office here, and I think it's something that a lot of the general public's not aware of, and I think it definitely warrants further consideration.
I can certainly have a report available for the public consultation. The public consultation is 1 week after the next council meeting.
Sorry, Councillor Randawa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In last council meeting, council passed 5-year recreational user fees. So, do you have number how much extra revenue we can getting from recreational department this year?
When I first did the calculation when the bylaw was proposed, I believe it was an additional $20,000 a year is how much extra the 5% would bring in. But I believe the bylaw also says that they were going to reserve 5% of their revenues to go into capital reinvestment. So again, it would amount to about $20,000.
Any other questions from council? I have a question, and is it possible to put in? I suppose the first question is: Have you finalized, or I guess semi-finalized, without it going to an audit yet? Have you finalized the figures for 2015?
We are still in the process of pulling those together because we're still receiving a few invoices here and there. I'm kind of loath to bring in information that isn't quite finalized, and our audit will be coming up in the next 2 weeks.
I was wondering then if it's prior to the public consultation meeting, if we can include a column in here with you got budget 2015, then actuals 2015. It's always easier to compare your budget to your actuals instead of your budget to the previous year's budget, although both are good.
Certainly our figures will be ready by then because our audit starts on the same day as the public consultation, so we can certainly put that in.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, then we need to have a motion to receive this report for information purposes, and ask this report and the other reports to go to the public consultation meetings. It's moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Wandawa. Any further discussion? Question would be in order. Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Declare that carried. We didn't have a closed meeting today, so there's obviously no resolutions from closed meetings. So the next is bylaws. And oh, I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much. There's correspondence for action. There's a letter from the City of Port Coquitlam regarding the FCM resolution for Build Canada grant funding, and it's brought forward for our consideration. Thank you. Who's going to present this? Mr. Long or? Ms. Baumann? Thank you.
I can do it. I reviewed it as well. So basically what they're looking for is a FCM resolution to change the Build Canada funding component that local governments have to contribute. Currently, Build Canada funding requires 1/3 funding from the federal government, 1/3 from the provincial government, and 1/3 from the municipal government. But given the fact that the municipal government is usually the one that's harder pressed to get the 1/3 funding, because some of these projects are fairly expensive, they're requesting that it change to 50% federal funding, 40% provincial funding, with the remaining 10% being the only thing that the local governments have to put up.
So is there any discussion or motion on this? Councillor Moreau?
I'm happy to make the motion.
And what are you going to move?
I would like to move that we endorse the resolution as presented by the City of Port Coquitlam.
Moved by Councillor Moreau, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we're on the second page. Thank you. Bylaws. It's again, a report from the city planner regarding zoning amendment bylaw 3382, 2015 application for Lot 3 District Lot 251 Range 5 Coast District Plan 10313 Drake Crescent. And was there a report, Mr. Krekic?
Your Worship, the way we structure our public hearings is that the report is read at the public hearing, and it's exactly the same as for the bylaw considerations. I will remain here should you have any questions.
So my understanding is that this is the time where if we want to talk about ensuring that amenities such as parks or trails are going to be part of the project, we'd have to do that this time, and then not move into third reading, but just have a motion for staff to negotiate a contract with the proponent regarding amenities in the way of parks and trails. Also, if we wanted to ensure that there's not going to be any more, we're going to limit the amount of development in that area, we can, this is the time to do that in regards to a motion and not have a third reading. Is that correct, Mr. Long? Did I understand you correctly?
That's correct. Madam Chair, I guess? No. Acting Mayor. There's no need for this to take the process any particular longer period of time. There's obviously a number of issues that the developer is still wrestling with. He hasn't really come to a conclusion about the kind of development he wants to establish. So I see no reason why this is going to take much longer in the total time frame of actually putting together development like this.
Councillor Cunningham?
Can this be addressed in the development permit phase?
Yes, it can. However, it's usually better to be conclusive right at the zoning stage.
So, Mr. Long, you don't believe this would take any much longer in the scheme of things for this project to go forward?
No, I don't. I think the applicant is suggesting that he might have to be actively involved in this. I don't think that's necessary. He could choose to make just a financial contribution, and that would probably make this much easier. If he wants to be involved, I would encourage that, but it's not necessary.
Councillor Niche? Sorry.
I think we can all agree, for the most part, that this looks like a pretty reasonable development in an area that is fitting, being what's around there. There was no real opposition showing up tonight to talk about it. A few of us were at the public meeting when the proponent had a public engagement, and really there was almost nobody that showed up. There was more councillors than people that showed up. So I think that for the most part, people have spoken that this is the right way to move. But I've met the person myself, and I feel that he seems like a pretty genuine person, and it seems like a good person to work with the city on doing a development like this. But he answered the question for me, and that was, when it was spoken by, I think, Ms. Thorkelson, that, when he was looking forward to building this. And there's actually by rezoning it tonight is not going to make a difference on when it's being built, because according to the fellow, it was not to be started until some trigger gets pulled on some sort of development. So we all understand that you're not going to spend a whole bunch of money unless something is there to support it. I do believe that we do need this in this town, but I think that we can come to some sort of agreement with the proponent first before we go any further, and I don't believe that is going to cause any further delay, because he spoke himself saying that this wasn't going to be something that happens in the next 2 weeks. It's not like if we rezone it tonight, the shovels are going to be in the ground tomorrow. This is still months away before announcements are to be made, and I really think we can work something out, because I really think that this is the right way to go, and I do genuinely believe him, but this day and age, we have to cross the T's and dot the I's before we can do anything.
Mr. Kinney, Councillor Kinney, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to thank Keith and the realtors for coming forward, because what he said tonight is true. Our city is suffering badly, and I hope we don't have to make this go on and on. Thank you.
Well, I've just been allowing us to have a wide-ranging conversation, and does somebody want to make a motion? So then I'd like to make a motion as to direct staff to discuss and come up with a proposal that they run by council first regarding amenities, regarding the number of the number of units to be built on the site, and to have that discussion, and also include council and bring it back, and then council can further go to a third reading at that time.
I'll second that motion.
It's moved and seconded. Councillor Cunningham.
I'd like part of the direction that this is for the next council meeting then, so this doesn't languish anywhere. If we can expedite it as much as possible.
Is that possible, Mr. Long?
Yes.
Then I don't have a problem with adding that to the motion, do you? Okay. So did you get the motion? Do you want to read it back to us?
The motion to direct staff to discuss and come up with a proposal that is to be run by council first to discuss amenities, number of units to be built on site, and to have discussion and to include council and bring back and then go to a third reading at that time for next council meeting.
That's pretty good. Any further discussion? Mr. Moreau, or Councillor Moreau, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. My one concern in trying to get, I mean, I don't disagree with Councillor Nish's comments. We got to cross our T's and dot our I's. My one concern is just with an absence of an amenity contribution policy. I just want to make sure that we're consistent in that. I know we're moving forward with DCC, or Development Cost Charge Bylaw, and I want to make sure that we're consistent with this development and any other future development that comes in. That this one developer, because of his timing, is coming in just before, as we're in the process of developing these policies that haven't existed, and I just want to make sure that the tone that we're setting and the policies that we're about to generate are consistent with this developer and every future development that comes after that.
Any further discussion? Question be in order? Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no additional items on their agenda. And does anybody have a housing committee report? Hearing none, then we'll move on to reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. Boy, this is a fast meeting tonight. If there's nothing to be brought up by anybody, then a motion to adjourn would be in order. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Opposed? Declare the council meeting closed. Adjourned.